What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Quality Talks podcast. I'm your host, Stu Day. And today we're going to be talking all things community. So I've got a great guest joining me who I'll introduce in a moment, who has a strong background in building, leading, and also contributing to communities. So if you're part of a community or you lead communities, this episode is definitely for you. And if you're not part of a community, then this episode is definitely for you, because it will tell you all about them and why you should actually become a member and or contribute or lead or set up your own community, whether that be in your workplace or whether that be outside of your workplace. I mean, we're pretty privileged, if I'm honest, in the quality space and testing space. Community is a big thing. We've got leaders such as Ministry of Testing that are out there building communities, but there's many others as well. And Quality Talks itself is also there building communities. So yeah, I'm really excited for this episode. I'm a little bit tired, I'm not going to lie today. We're recording this on a Sunday morning. So yeah, just going to chill into this episode with our guest in a moment and get things going. So who's our guest? So our guest is none other than Drew Pontikis. How you doing, Drew?
Very well, Stu. How are you?
I'm very well. As I said a moment before we came on air, I feel like we're going to have a chilled conversation, right? We're not going to be too excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much like you. I was watching the London Marathon before you joined, so I'm pretty worn out now as well. I feel like I've burnt some calories this morning.
Oh, brilliant. So, Drew, we've known each other sort of for a number of years, you know, through community, through network and stuff like that. But for those that maybe don't know you, how about you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name's Drew. I have been in software testing and software development for I think it's a worrying amount of time now. I think it's coming up to 17 years now. I sort of, like many people did, I fell into testing as a means of getting into IT and software. I didn't. My background before that wasn't really technology based. I was training to be a nurse of all things before getting into IT. But yeah, I've had throughout my career, I've had a variety of different roles. So I've been a tester, a test manager, quality lead, various different roles there. But I found the further and into my career and the different kind of roles that I've done, the things that I've really enjoyed have been things that involve being and working with people. I
Mm.
I tend to describe myself now as I've always been at best an average software tester. I've always worked with people who are better at it than me, which
Yeah.
is an exciting place to be because it means you learn throughout your career. But um, I think I've always enjoyed working with people the most, and that's kind of how I fell into the sort of community type activities. So I would, so I've been a meetup organizer for
Mhm.
many years. I have been an active conference goer, tour, and um, participant. I occasionally speak at conferences. I'm much happier going along and participating rather than going up and speaking. But sometimes
Yeah.
it's good to keep yourself practiced. Uh, I am currently working for a company called QualisFlow, where I'm an engineering manager, and uh, yeah, I suppose that's me. That's a good.
Nice.
That's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, nice. And I mean, we first met, I can't remember, it was at Ministry of Testing Peterborough, wasn't it? You used to run
Yes,
those sessions, and I think I came and I did it. Was it a BDD workshop I ran, didn't I?
it
That
was.
session, wasn't
Yes,
it? Yeah.
yeah. Taught us all about Gherkin.
Yeah, clear. That's
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that now. I can't remember what year it was, to be honest. It's so long
It's
ago.
it's better not to think about what year things like this
Oh,
happened, isn't it? Because it's always an upsetting amount of time.
honestly, it is. It
Mm.
is. And every day I look in the mirror and my beard gets a little bit whiter, and
Yeah.
so but I just want to touch on, before we get into the community side of things, Drew. I just want to touch on your transition to engineering manager, because that's new, isn't it? That's a new thing, and I'm just interested to see or understand a little bit more about how maybe there's some comparisons sort of from quality leadership into engineering leadership from that perspective? What's the same? What's different? What's transferable? So maybe we can just spend a little bit of time just chatting around that for people maybe that are thinking about different, pathways in their career. Might give them some insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have broken the rule of engineering management, which is don't talk about engineering management, because it's one of those quite difficult it's one of those roles that's quite difficult to find, and nothing fills me with dread than someone says, "Oh, what's an engineering manager do?" So I am currently 2 months into my doing this role. It's the first time that I've done it, but what I find and what I have what I've come to realize, and what a lot of engineering managers who I've spoken to have said, is that what you bring to the table as an engineering manager is the sum of your experience and what you've been involved with before. So I've been involved in many quality leadership roles. I've led teams before, as I'm sure many of your audience are going to have done.
Yeah.
I always undermine myself every time I talk about myself in any sort of technical forum, and I say, "So, hello, my name's Drew, and I can't code." So, and that has always been something that has kind of held me back, because I'm sure, like a lot of people, you look at an engineering manager and you think it's the progression pathway from software engineer, and because I can't write code, perhaps that's a role that's not available to me, and it's absolutely not the case. Not every engineering management role is the same, and you will be, sometimes you will be the wrong shape in the wrong hole, but my job involves working with people, helping teams work effectively. That's all stuff I've been doing for years. I've got a lot of experience. I can do that. It doesn't involve me to be hands-on with the code. Brilliant. I'm very happy to not be hands-on with the code. It involves me helping support, embed good quality practices. Yep, big tick, I can do that. So because it's quite hard, and as it will bring us back to the community point of view, one of the things that I've got involved with, a fresh 2 months into my role, is, along with Neil Younger and Parveen Khan, we've set up the Ministry of Testing's engineering management chapter. And
yes, I saw that. Yes.
So both Neil and Parveen, they're way more experienced in engineering management than me. My desire is not necessarily to be the authority. My desire is that happens. So that's anybody who's interested in finding out more about engineering management, come and check us out, because I found it really hard to find sort of community spaces, which is my learning style preference, to help me develop in that role. So I'm hoping to help facilitate that to happen there as well.
Perfect. Love it. And it's great. It's so great to hear somebody that's been able to find an opportunity like you have with, with your background. And like you say, you're open and honest, like, you can't code, but that's not holding you back. And I think that's something that businesses, organizations need to think about more, right? What do they really need from an engineering manager role? What do they need from X role? And rather than sort of thinking that they need all these other things when maybe they do or they don't, so because and obviously, again, what goes into a role profile can excite or put people off, I think that's brilliant that you've been given that opportunity, and I know you'll smash it, Drew. I absolutely know you'll smash it, especially with Neil, working with Neil and Parveen, who are both great as well. So anybody that's interested in getting involved in that engineering chapter, then they can find that on the Ministry of Testing space, can't they?
Yes.
Is that correct?
The Motorverse. Yeah.
In the Motorverse. Yeah. Awesome. So let's get into communities then, because this is exciting. I love communities, and I want to kick us off with what is community, right? So my sort of perception of community over the years is probably, it has evolved, and I'm sure yours has as well, Drew, over the years. What does community mean to you now, maybe versus maybe what it meant to you, say 4, 5, 6 years ago, or whatever?
Yeah. So I started, as a lot of people will do, with community, as purely as a consumer. So
Mm.
I was at a stage in my career where I felt I was sort of stagnating. I felt, I'm not a big fish in a small pond, but I was in a pond,
Yeah.
and that I wasn't, my sort of learning and growth had stopped. And I
Yeah.
wanted to look beyond the barriers of the team and the company that I work for, and I wanted to learn. So the, so like many testers, I discovered Ministry of Testing,
Yeah.
and um, weirdly, I found, not weirdly, almost a little bit embarrassingly now, I didn't really talk about it with the team, because I
Mm.
joined that and I thought, this is an advantage for me, so I want to keep it to myself.
Yeah.
I want to be part of this, and I want to consume from it. And as a consumer, I would be on the Slack channel. I'd go on the site. I would read. I would look at so I'd look at the channels. I would click all the links as they came through, and I would grow that way.
Yeah.
Um, then I discovered a local meeting. So I live just outside of Peterborough, and I
Hmm.
became aware of a local meetup chapter called Digital People in Peterborough.
Okay.
And I went along one day. That was the first meetup event that I'd ever been to,
Yeah.
and uh, and it was great. We all got together. I walked in. I sort of sat at the back because I thought, well, I don't want to be too near the front. I don't know what's going to happen here. Um, One of the hosts saw me, came over, said hello, introduced themselves, told us all about it, pointed
Yeah.
me towards the. It was in a coffee shop, and just go get your cup of coffee. We got a tap running, those kind of things, and it was great. It felt like a nice place to be,
Yeah.
and I came away with that feeling really enriched. Actually, that I'd learnt something. I'd heard for some
Mm.
exports, and I felt like that internal learning momentum was starting to build up again.
Yeah.
And a bit of time went by, and I got the opportunity to go to my first conference, which was Test Bash in Manchester.
Yeah.
Would have been 2017, maybe that sort of
Mm.
time,
Yeah.
and immediately just felt um, amongst friends,
Yeah.
and like-minded people. They weren't people who were just turning up for work
Mm.
and doing their job because that was their job, and then they go home again. They were people who cared about the same thing that I cared about. They were there actively trying to learn and get better at things.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there thinking, do you know what? Actually, I think I need a bit more of this in my life. I think I need to go and
Mm.
recreate it. And I I went I came back and I thought, well, do you know what? I don't have to be the face of things. I just want to see it happen. So
Mm.
I sort of reached out and said, if I put on a testing event in Peterborough, would anyone want to come to it? And then
Yeah.
suddenly people wanted to come. And so that's kind of how I got into starting meetups. Now I keep talking about meetups as if they are
Mm.
what a community is, and they are not.
No.
And um, what a community is the people
Yeah.
inside that. And I didn't. It took me a long time to realize that, because you kind of there's blurred lines between event management and community management.
Yes.
As over the years, I've kind of realized that actually it doesn't really matter if you have a big shiny event, you have sponsors, you have food, you have pizza, or whatever it might be. What matters is people are getting value out of it, and
Mm.
that realization, actually, I'll name drop him. He probably doesn't even remember he said this to me, but um, I'm sure you've done the same, because I know you've run events as well. I ran
Yeah.
an event, and I think, like, I was expecting like 60 people, and had 10
Yeah.
people turn up.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with Lee Rathbone about it, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, look, I feel like what am I doing wrong? And he said, um, think about it like this. So if you ran an event and 60 people turn up, but 10 people get something valuable out of it, is that good? And the answer is obviously no, because a lot of people have wasted their time. So okay, so if you run an event and 10 people turn up, but all of them get value out of it, then is that success to you? And that kind of flipped my thinking. Is that actually, what matters is what people are getting. Is those people who are coming to it, are they getting something meaningful out of it? And that is kind of where my thinking flipped from being wanting to put on events and do shiny things and feel good because we've done that, to feeling good that I was doing something and helping enable people to learn and to grow and be connected to each other. So since then, I've been lucky enough to do actual roles where I've been responsible for looking after communities of practice, looking after communities of practice initiatives, and setting these kind of things up. And it's the thing that gives me energy in the morning. It's what gets me out of bed, is the thought of actually doing something and creating growth and value for with and for other people as well. So I think my thinking has changed over time from being just someone who consumes at these events to being someone who actually wants to see them grow and succeed. I know we're going to come to it later because I'm going to bring it up, but I've moved to a much more social learning view of how we go about things. It's not an approach for everybody, but it's the way that I like to learn. So again, I suppose I'm still consuming in that way, but yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely going to come on to that moving forward. I just wanted to pick up on your comment there, that conversation you had with Lee, because I think it's really interesting that I used to be in the same headspace because I used to, with a couple of colleagues of mine, we used to run the Agile Leicester meetups, and it initially, like I think the very first one that we ran. We had a huge turnout. We did Lego Scrum. It was like a massive hit. I think we had like 80 people turn up, and it was like, this is amazing, right? And then the next one we had like 50, and then you're like, okay. And then the next one we might have had like 20, and and it was we never at any point did we achieve another 80 people turning up, right? And I, like you, initially I was a bit like, oh, what are we doing wrong? And kind of. But then I think through conversations I've been having over the years with different people, like yourself and others that work in the community and do things like this, it comes down to the value and what the value of what's people are getting out of it. So like you say, whether you've got 10 people or 100 people, it doesn't matter. It's about how many of those people are actually getting value. And I found that some of the best ones I've ever been to are the more intimate ones where you're able to, you probably feel a little bit less intimidated maybe to ask questions and speak to people because there aren't so many there, or their work. I really like sort of the workshopy type styles where you're getting a bit more interactive rather than just having somebody stand at the front of a room and talk, and that's much harder to do in a much bigger group. So we often ran like smaller workshop type events through that meetup and things like that. And then but that's something actually it's kind of like that the format of sort of people and how they learn. That's really important within a community, isn't it? And especially if you're leading a community, to try and understand. It comes back to how do people get value out of this, and making it as inclusive as you possibly can to allow people to learn in different ways. What sort of things have you maybe tried or learned over time to sort of allow that to happen?
Oh, well, I think that I suppose the short answer to that is I steal everything. When I go and I go to a lot of events. I go and take part in a lot of things, and every time I do something that's good, I go, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm going to copy that, and I think that's actually how we met. one time is that I must have been to an event where I'd seen you doing something, and I'd reached out to you and said, you ran this event, I really enjoyed it. Can you come and do this? Can you come and do it for us? And that, I think, having a mindset where you're thinking about how is this going to benefit others, and how, I can't wait to share this with other people, those kind of things. There is a trap you can fall into, and I know I certainly have, and I'm sure you have as well, that my preferences are not everybody's preferences. So I do preface things like that, and I say, well, this is how I like to learn. So my learning preferences is I like to read, and I like to talk about reading with other people. That, nothing would make me happier. I said, if I won the lottery, my dream job is I'd go and be a librarian. Surrounded by books all day, talking about books with people, I would be happy as anything. But that is that's not everybody's preference. So part of what I do when I work with the community is I talk to people and say, okay, let's realize together what your learning preference is. Now, it might be that your learning preference is that you like to listen to experts, and you like to hear what they have to say. You like to take it away. You like to process it. And if there's one thing that's going to disturb you from that, it's having a conversation with another person while you're doing it. So, some people are like that, and that's fine. Because, the goal is that we learn, not that we learn in a particular shape. Some like to get hands-on, some like to dive in, some like to have a laptop in front of them so they can augment their learning. One person sitting there with a dual screening while they're doing it, looking up other bits to contribute to what they're learning, is another person going, ugh, I can't believe you're not paying attention to the speaker. It's so rude. So being aware of people's different learning styles and learning preferences and how people are going to behave is really, really fundamental to that. And when it comes to leading a community, you have to accept that the preference for learning style is not necessarily the thing that is going to bind us together. So you have to be able to do events and learning opportunities that are going to benefit people based on how their preferences are. So here's a really basic example. During COVID, we were all locked down. We'd all discovered what Zoom was. I don't know about you, but I found that I was getting to the end of the day and thinking, oh my God, I don't think I can face another Zoom call to run a meetup. And I kind of thought, the thought came to me at the time that actually this is learning and development. I'm supporting my team and at work and my community to learn and develop and get better at their skills. So why aren't we doing this during the day? Why is this not considered learning and development time? Why do we have to give up our own time to do these things? And so I started still hosting virtual meetups, but doing them during the day. And not at lunchtime. I have very strong opinions about doing community sessions at lunchtimes. But I was hosting them during the day, and I would put in the notes and say, if your boss questions you, this is what you say. This is how you justify this time. And the surprising thing about that is that an entirely new set of people turn up, because evening meetups are, evening events and evening sessions exclude a vast group of people with children, people with families, people with stuff to do and lives to lead, and people who don't want to give up their evenings to do these kind of things. So, being flexible, doing different things, trying different styles, accepting they're not going to work for everybody is a great way of keeping it fresh and helping be an inclusive community. Something to think about is when you do that, it's very easy to lose your identity as a group. So having, I know it sounds a little bit wishy-washy, but actually having a charter, a mission, a statement of purpose as to
Yes.
what it means to be part of this community really is a fundamental thing, because that helps us all tie ourselves to the identity of the community, even if this particular thing that's happening isn't necessarily for me. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to be doing everything.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because sometimes I've in the past, I've had conversations with people, and it's almost like they've said, well, I don't feel like I got much to offer, so there's probably no point in me coming along, or you know what I mean, or I'm not really interested in that topic, so I'm not going to come along.
Mm-hmm.
And it's trying to help people understand, well, actually, just by you coming along, you can actually have conversations with people, because something might come up in terms of a question that maybe you can answer and somebody else can answer. So having that charter, I find, is actually really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And they're breaking that down into, what's the purpose of the community, what the values are, not making it too over complex or anything like that, but helping people, understand how they can contribute, how they can connect with others, the value that they will get, but also the value they can bring as well. And I think that's really important. So yeah. And when we were talking yesterday, Drew, before we, when we were sort of talking about shaping this episode and stuff like that, you mentioned something around a value creation model, didn't you? And you sort of said that that's something that you've been using more recently. Is that right?
Yeah. So value creation model is the brainchild of Beverly and Etienne Venkatraina, whose names may be familiar to anyone who's ever looked at communities of practice. They are practitioners. They're widely accredited of coming up with the name, with the term communities of practice, and they are social scientists, and they develop the theory around social learning. Now, before I talk about that, I will explain what social learning is, because it's a bit of a concept to get your head around. So, if you think about the way that we learn, there are there's many different styles, but there's two main styles. So there is a simple learning partnership, and it's where it is transactionary. So there will be people who listen to this podcast, and they will hear something that I say or something that you say, and they'll like that, and they'll go and look it up, and it will be useful to them. And there's no interaction between us. We don't know who is listening. They don't know that we're thinking about them or anything like that. It's just a one-way transfer of information. And this is actually what helps the human race, and this is what helps the human race succeed. This transactional passing on of knowledge. You look all the way back through time. You can easily imagine cavemen sitting around the fire while the tribe leader is showing them how to tie flints to the tips of sticks to make spears, and take out a mammoth. I'm a historian, as you know, but that is very, it is transactional by definition. So you are getting something from it, but you are getting a thing. So there is no, what our potential imaginary listener is getting from listening to this conversation is my view of what the shape of this thing is. And that's all they're getting. They're not getting any flavor around that. They're not getting the opportunity to contribute or influence me or steer the conversation in any way. So the alternative is social learning. And social learning is essentially bringing people together to learn something new together. And I mistook this for, it's a workshop. I know what a workshop is. It's not the same thing. If we think about your BDD workshop that we mentioned earlier, we all sat in a room and we listened to you as the expert teach us how to do things. So this is a transactional relationship. A social learning exercise would be bringing people together. You create a flat experience, which means you take out any sort of, if you're in a professional setting, you take out any job title, any degree of seniority, and everybody contributes equally. And that's really hard and scary for a lot of people. If you're a junior person in the group, talking up to speaking truth to power, if you are the most senior person around the table, a lot of your job is looking like you've got your act together and you know what you're talking about. Being vulnerable in front of others is quite difficult. So often these types of activities use structured language and structured, very heavily facilitated structures to allow an equal footing for everybody. And what comes from those is you often create something really new and exciting that comes from that. So when you do this, because there's no set destination or set outcome, it's often quite hard to articulate what value you get from that, from doing those kind of things. And so they came up with this value creation model. So there are 8 different types of value within this this creation model. So I'm just going to reel them off and then we'll talk about them. So you have immediate, potential, applied, realized, orienting, strategic, enabling, and transformative. So we'll put that to the side. We'll now talk.
I couldn't even write those down.
You got too quick for you. Yeah? So let's
too quick. Let's just talk about it.
All right, so let's talk. So somebody is listening to this podcast right now. They might be. I hope so. One or two people are listening.
Maybe.
So
my mum will be.
Your mum will be. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So that one person hears something that we say, and they are, I don't know, they're out for a walk, nice evening walk, taking the dog out or something like that, and they go, "Oh yeah, I recognise that. That's me. I'm happy. Someone else is feeling like me." That's immediate value. They're doing something, we're consuming something, we're getting something, we are happy about this because we feel aligned to it. We've got no onward goals or anything like that. Just the fact that the thing happened. I'm getting immediate value from sitting here right now because I'm on a podcast and I feel good about myself because I'm doing something. So it's great. Now, you've got this is a good episode, Stu, because you've got 2 listeners today. So your other listener, this other listener has heard what we're talking about today and said, "Oh, that's an interesting idea. I wonder if I might be able to use that." Now, they haven't got the opportunity right now. They don't really. It's a kind of a half-baked idea for them, but that's interesting. It sparked something inside them, and they're interested. So this is potential value. It's something that you've built up this vast data bank of potential opportunities that you could go off and do, that something could happen, that you might do something off the back of this, but you also might not. It might not be useful for you for 6 months, a year, 18 months, something like that. So we spin off into the future now, and listener number 2 has started a new job, and they look around and they go, I remember hearing Stu and Drew talking about communities and how they could go about doing it. What's that thing? Social learning, that thing. I'm going to go away, look that up. Read. Actually, I think that's going to work for us. We could try something like that here, and I could see why that might make a difference. So again, we're doing something right now. We might be putting on a session just to see if people come along and see what happens with that. This is applied value. We're doing something. We can see the goal and it's coming. And brilliant news, that has made a difference to those people. That community. They've really got a lot of value out of that. They might have changed their way of approaching things, and they might start, because they've done that, they might start they might start driving their skills management up, their knowledge management, whatever it might be. A change in approach. That's realized value. And all of these different things, they're all different ways of looking at value that you might create from just having a conversation with people. And this is something that when I talk to people, when I talk to organizations, and we talk about communities of practice and communities events, what we're doing is we say, okay, you can visualize these things, can't you? You can see what I'm talking about, and you understand that these things happen. You can understand why those intangible things are valuable. And the answer is yes, because you can see that, and you can understand that that is a story, and you can see how that story would work. So you can say, okay, well, if we accept that each of those things is a thing, we can start measuring those things, and we can say, we can start making those intangible things tangible. We can say, all right, well, these are our lagging indicators. So if we do more of these things, we will get this. And if we are supporting these things, we might not necessarily see the value that we've created for a year's time or anything like that, but we are building resiliency into our systems. We are building support into our people, and we're doing the right things. So it's, if you want a better explanation of it, there's some really great books around it, but it's it really changed my thinking as to how I would go about how I go about doing things.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't actually, until we spoke yesterday, I hadn't heard of it. But I deliberately didn't go away and research it because I knew we were going to chat about it. And I'm somebody that likes to kind of just hear it in the moment a little bit as well, and not allow sort of come to the conversation with any perceived thoughts or anything like that. Because I could have probably gone and read the wrong thing, for example. But you mentioned there about there's lots of books and resources. So maybe we can share those in the show notes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Links and stuff, and we'll put those together for people to do a little bit more. But I think just as I think when you were talking about like the social learning side of things, I think that's really interesting, and because I kind of like when you were talking about that, I was thinking, oh yeah, workshops. And actually no, that's not, is it? Right. Yeah. So in your experience, have you done much consciously to create that social learning environment?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I always look for opportunities to where I look for those transactional learning opportunities, and I look for opportunities to change them to be more inclusive. Now, my two caveats is, firstly, I fully accept that there is absolute value in learning from experts. I don't disagree with that. So, if I was a caveman, I'd be dead from eating the wrong berries. That's if we didn't have that, we wouldn't succeed as a species, as a society. So what you're hearing is me saying don't do that, you've taken the wrong message from what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that look for opportunities where there is to flip the model around and make things more collaborative. So the easy one, and this is a free tip for you and for anybody who's listening. So if you go to an event, you will no doubt see somewhere, because it's the fun and funky thing to have on their agenda now, is a fireside chat or a panel discussion. But there's never a fire for a start, which is always disappointing. But it's essentially the speaker gets a chair. That's what fireside chat or panel means. So people go up on the stage, they introduce themselves. They take audience questions, or you have a host asking questions to the speaker. Transactional, and we are learning from these people. How often have you sat and listened to a fireside chat or a panel discussion and thought, on a good day, I don't agree with what this person is saying, or this person's talking rubbish, or that is not my experience? But you've been there, haven't you?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So, if you are a a host of these kind of events or a community leader, here is a way that you can flip the switch on that. There's an activity called a fishbowl, and let's take the panel for example. So you have 4 chairs sitting at the front. They're normally bar stools, so the people are sitting high up, but they sit in a line facing the audience. So you and me. So instead of that, what you do is you have 4 chairs, and the 4 chairs facing each other, and you have one microphone or something to act as a prop microphone, and the structure is people sitting in these chairs are going to talk to each other, and you're not so you're going to talk when you have the microphone. If you haven't got the microphone, you say, I've got something to say, you put your hand up, you do that. But you start with 3 people in the chairs, so you have 1 empty chair. You start the conversation off, somebody talks for a little while, they hand the microphone on to the next one. If the audience member, so if there's somebody in the audience listening to this conversation thinking, that's not my experience, they can get up, go and sit in the empty chair and take the microphone so they can come and be part of the conversation. Then another person in the audience sort of listens in and thinks, I've got something to add too. They can walk up, they can tap one of the members on the shoulder, take their chair. That person goes back from being the contributor to being the consumer in the audience, and they get to join. So instead of being you've got to listen to these 2 or 3 or 4 people and get their opinions and then go on with your life, you can be part of creating this broader conversation. You can actually contribute to something. And then we think about that value creation that we've talked about. There are people in the audience listening and think, whoa, this person actually knows. Why are we not listening to this person? I'm going to reach out to them and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to get them to come and talk, tell me a little bit more about their rights, and we're going to build on those things. So, that's what I do differently. I look for opportunities where you can make them make learning opportunities interactive and collaborative. Because when I've been involved in them, and my experience from talking to people is, if you're the sort of person who thinks that sounds awful, don't ever talk to me again, you're not going to get up and go and contribute. But if you're the sort of person who goes to an event and thought, I'd love to have something to say on that, but I'm not brave enough to go and do a panel discussion, having 2 minutes up on as part of this, and then walking away, that's a great entry point into doing these doing these kind of things. It's a great opportunity for you to go, oh, I dipped my toes in the water and it works. I might try this one. So it helps people grow. It helps people learn. So that's a freebie for everyone. That again, like all my best ideas, it isn't my idea. So it's go away and try those kind of things. Don't just settle for things that we know. Look for opportunities to be collaborative and interactive.
Yeah, I really like that. I've not ever. I don't think I've ever seen that in practice. I've never been to an event or anything. I've seen that in practice, but that's definitely something that I'm gonna go away and think about. And maybe, we want to do more live quality talks events, which will kind of like sofa chats and stuff like that. And maybe that's something we could bring into that with live audiences. And if people are up for it, because it's kind of like creating the environment where people feel comfortable to do that, isn't it, as well? And for them to come up and be part of that discussion, and it just brings back to what you were saying at the start around social learning, about removing sort of the hierarchical nature of a conversation or sort of a learning environment that you're within. Because you could be up, it could be 3 people could be CEOs, for example. Does that put people off coming up and sitting in that 4th chair? Who knows, right? So you sort of got to blanket it and say, this is an environment for everyone, right? And I'm guessing is that kind of your experience with that?
And also, just because it's freeform doesn't mean it doesn't need facilitating, and it really needs facilitating. It needs more, doesn't it? Really? Because like I said, if there are 4 CEOs up on the up talking to each other, having a conversation, and you are you are a, I don't know, a middle manager or whoever it is, are you going to go and tap your CEO on the shoulder and say, thanks very much for that, but I've got something I'd like to say, so you go sit down. It's quite intimidating to that. So it does actually still require facilitation. And quite often when I do this, I have plants in the crowd and say, if nobody has got up in 5 minutes in or in 10 minutes in or something like that, can I rely on you to go and do it and take that burden away from them to do those kind of things. So they are really cool. Other things like sorry, go on.
So I was just going to pick up on that actually, because I've done similar things when I've hosted events or done these sort of learning sessions where I've sort of had people that I've asked, if just to ask questions, and it's not even a preceded question. It's kind of like, if we aren't getting any questions, are you okay to just contribute with a question just to get things flowing? And it's amazing how that changes the dynamic of the room. Because nobody wants to be that first person, do they? It's almost like, I don't. So if you've got sort of people that kind of can jump in, I think that massively helps. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I'm glad you did, because that's better. So that is the essence, the real spark of social learning is that implicit permission to question authority. So as I said, in a transactional learning relationship, whether they like it or not, the person who is teaching is in a position of authority because you are listening to them talk. Now, questioning that authority doesn't matter how open or receptive to that they be, there is a bump and a barrier to do that. So if you can get into a social learning space where you remove that authority balance altogether, then that's where the real magic happens. But as a facilitator or as a leader or as an organizer, your job is to try and flatten that as much as possible and make it easy for people to challenge, to question authority and to push forward. A good way of doing that is with real structured language kind of activities, and saying, we're all familiar with things like you're only allowed to say yes and things like that, but saying, doing an exercise and saying, okay, well, this makes me think of this, and just saying this, you have to answer by saying this, or those kind of ways, just to prompt people to talk, give permission and a safety structure for people to contribute into a conversation and into the outcome.
Yeah, and that's the key driver, isn't it, between somebody feeling like, I guess, that contribution versus pure consumption, and allowing people to feel like, I can actually engage here, rather than just sit and listen and almost like take that back seat. You mentioned like the first event you ever went to, and it's not just events, we know this, but the first event you ever went to, you immediately gravitated to the back of the room. And a lot of people do, right? Because it's new, and almost like some people are maybe a bit more proactive and they're a bit more sort of like, I'm going to say social, but you know what I mean? Proactive and sort of going and speaking to people and introducing themselves. But there's a lot of people that aren't. So I think that starting to build these sort of these safe spaces, this understanding for people, and I guess that comes back to the charters that we were talking about before as well, and all this sort of stuff. It all helps between trying to get that balance between contribution versus consumption, and kind of going down that road, doesn't it?
And I think there is an element of being open and inclusive that comes with a community. So how do I word this? If you are in if you're part of a community, what that ultimately boils down to is that you belong somewhere, and that this is a space that I belong to and I am part of. Now, if you want to be the kind of community which is exclusive and say, well, I belong here and you don't, then to be honest, I haven't really got time for that. I can see that sometimes they have their place, but it's kind of not for me. if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of exclusionary communities. But at the same time, if you are new and you are approaching a community, for the first time, then you don't know the rituals and the ceremonies and all the things that form that community, and that community holds important to it. So imagine if you went to a meetup, for example. You walked in and they had some pizza out at the side, and you go, oh, okay, we've got some pizza. You go over, you pick some up, and then you turn around, the whole room is looking at you horrified because you've done something out of character. You'd feel awful about it, wouldn't you?
You would, yeah.
So you play it safe. You come in, you sit at the back, and you look at the room, and you see what people are doing. Is that, oh, no one's touching the food, nobody's doing this. And okay, well, I'll sort of get to sort of get the feel of things first.
Yeah.
And as a community member, if you see people like that, what a healthy community, somebody is going to turn around and reach out to you and say, hiya, is this your first time? Oh, brilliant, nice to meet you. If you are a community leader, I think it's your responsibility either to be doing that or to be making sure that happens. I think I've told this. I'm going to name drop again, but I learned that behavior from the first time I went to a meetup. It was run by Caro Stolzenberg, and I walked in, and she came up straight up to me and said, "Hi, Drew. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. I want to introduce you to this person. He works in the same space as you," and just walked me over to this person and introduced me. So I was immediately connected to someone, and then just walked off and left us to it. And I immediately felt welcome in that space. I immediately felt connected to that as a community, and it's kind of your job to make sure that people feel connected and feel part of it if you're the community lead. So I feel like I've just wandered off and gone and done my own train of thought now, and I can't even remember what question you actually asked me. But
fine.
But back of the room. Yeah. So yes, I think it's kind of being prepared and open for those kind of things. So I don't know if you've ever had this, but I was running a meetup once, and the speaker was midway through their session, and somebody put their hand up and said, and so they stopped and they said, "Yep, sorry, go on." And he went, "Hi, I was told there was going to be food. Do you know when the food's getting here?" And I was livid. I was like, I can't believe you've done that. That is, if you are a attendee at an event or part of a participant in a community, you have to respect the community, and you have to, you can't just go, "Everybody stop because I'm a bit hungry." It's so you've got to create and protect and accept that culture. Whether you are a participant, whether you are a long-time member, or whether you're a lead.
Yeah, so I've got stories. I got stories. Like
I bet you have,
yeah. But there was I suppose this is something I noticed in when I was running community events in London, especially that and using Meetup, that you'd get people signing up that actually were only coming for the food and the drink. They weren't really interested in engaging with people. They weren't interested in the topics. They were, and one time I had someone turn up who was intoxicated, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. He got there. So the first speaker was already on. They were chatting, and the door knocks on the door, and then so I go and open the door, and this person sort of like I welcomed them in, just sort of saying, "What's your name?" And they're on the list because they've signed up.
Yeah.
So and he was like, "Oh, could you tell me where the toilet is?" So show them to where the toilet was.
Yeah.
and come back, and he said, "When's the pizza coming?" Like this. And he didn't say it like out loud to the order, but he said this first thing he said was like, "When's the pizza coming?" And I said, "Well, the pizza will be here after the talks." So I said, "You've got about another 45 minutes." I said, "But you're not here just for the pizza, are you?" And he was like, "Well, no, I'm not." But he was clearly like he'd been drinking.
Yeah.
So I very casually just escorted him back out the main door that he came in. We stood on the landing for a little bit having a conversation, and then I just offered him the opportunity to leave very politely. Maybe not as politely as I could have done, but very, and I think that's something to be mindful of as well, that there's a lot of work that goes into behind the scenes to make that experience the best possible experience for everybody that's there. If you're leading and building and I don't, the events are one thing, but also, when you're creating spaces within your organization, for example, you're creating spaces for the wider community, across the world. In some cases, there's so much time and effort that goes into that behind the scenes that people don't see, and I'm sure you've experienced this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I feel like you handled that very well, though, Stu. Yeah. But I mean, I can't speak. I'm not well travelled, so I can't speak for the rest of the world outside of the UK. But from my experience, London I don't even know if it still is, but London used to be pretty bad for things like that, where there's with these kind of events, they kind of go three ways. You either they're there for the people, they're there for the company to show off their office, or they're there for just for people to be seen networking. And if you're gonna put on an event, or you want to be a community, you need to be clear which one of those you want to be. Now, you can be two of those things. I've definitely been to meetups just because I want to go and have a nosy around the office. But I think
it's about being respectful, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like to respectful of the community, understanding that. So whether you're there to, it's just in that moment you're a guest of the community or you're a member of the community, and it's about being respectful to the community and whether it could be the speaker or the workshop host or whoever's and I think kind of coming back to what you were saying earlier about having values, having charters, it kind of just that's how you build a true community rather than it just being an event you put on.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be. I always think of that Simpsons meme as a "don't make me tap the sign," that one, when it comes to values. But I think if you get it right, and I think as a leader, your responsibility is to help the community get it right. You end up with a form of social governance where people, you don't need to be tapping the sign and doing those kind of things, because there is an accepted way of behaving, and culturally the momentum of the group drives it that way. If we say we ask that you actively contribute as a part of our community value, you're gonna see people say, okay, this isn't for me, and they're going to leave. But it's a green light to those who stay that yes, you can get up and you can contribute, but it's also an expectation that we're looking to you to contribute as well. We don't want to just carry people along, So actually living and breathing those values is the fundamental thing that makes them valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Before we wrap everything up, Drew, I want to sort of, maybe we can share a few sort of tips or insights for people that are either looking to build a community. Let's say within an organization. Let's keep it relatively confined rather than going universal. And also, if you're looking to join a community again as well, where do you start? But let's talk about sort of like looking to build internally within an organization. from your experience, and I can share some of mine as well, but from your experience, what would you maybe be a couple of tips that you would sort of say to people to get them started and get them thinking?
Okay, so thing number one that is from my experience, and I'll be honest, I thought this was everybody's experience, but it turns out not everybody thinks like this. So, my advice to anybody is be prepared to be vulnerable. Be prepared to be the first one to do things. And when I've talked about this or when I've written about this before, I refer to it as the spark moment, where you might all be sitting together, or being prepared to be the one who says, if I did this, would anyone like to take part in it? Or is it, it's, the flip side of this is, does anyone think this meeting could have been an email? That kind of thing. Being the person who's prepared to challenge the norm and say, is anybody else missing out on this too? Or would anyone else like to do this? Because I can guarantee there is at least one other person in the room, whatever room you're in, where the answer is yes, but they're not brave enough to say it. So that is where that is the initial moment where the momentum starts to build. So the reason, I think, well, there's two reasons I think a lot of people don't do that. And that's firstly is number one, they don't want everyone to go, what are you talking about? There's always somebody else who does it, who wants to do it. But number two is they don't want to be the one who goes, yeah, that's a great idea, go sort that out. They don't want to be lumbered with it, because none of us are experts. I can confidently say I'm not an expert. I'm sure you would be the same, Stu.
I don't believe in experts.
Exactly. Yeah. So, nobody wants to be considered the center, the authority on this subject, because they don't feel like they're the authority on it. And let my experience be a warning from history for many people as well. You don't have to be the expert. You just have to care about growth and learning. We come all the way back. We mentioned about the engineering management chapter that we're working on. My position has been clear from the outset. I've been doing this job for 2 months. I haven't got I am not the subject matter expert when it comes to engineering management, but I want to see it happen, because it will benefit me. If it means that getting it set up, getting the momentum going, and then somebody else taking it on or taking it further, or somebody else talking and sharing what they know in it, brilliant. I just want it to happen. And that's the attitude that I would recommend to people, is that if there's something you want to happen, be the change you want to see in the world, and be the one who puts their hand up and says, I want to do this. Now, I am always amazed at the kindness and generosity of people who are passionate about things. So, I have met more people than I would ever imagine. I have done things that are well beyond any reasonable expectation that I would be able to do, just because I've been prepared to reach out and ask for people. And that, I think, is the key skill when you're looking to start a community, is just be prepared for people to say no to you, because you'd be amazed at how many people will say yes. So go be brave, go and ask and be open.
Absolutely love that, Drew, and it's definitely something I've experienced. I think the other sort of maybe little pointer I would add on to that is there can be this perception of forced community, i.e., everybody has to attend, it's mandatory, all this sort of stuff. Whereas for me that just doesn't work, and it doesn't set the right tone. So I'm very much more about encouraging people, helping people, sharing what potential value, because we talked about that people can get from this, but also what they can contribute, and allow them to make their own decisions, and try and allow things to sort of grow and form organically. through relationships and networks and stuff like that. It's almost like the Field of Dreams movie, right? It's like if you build it, they will come. It doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that is my golden rule when building internal communities of practice. You never ever make them mandatory, because if they are mandatory, it's not a community. You're not choosing to be there. It's a meeting, and people will behave accordingly within a meeting. So that's, I think, it's good that you called that out, because I didn't, that had slipped my mind. But never make them mandatory. You want people who want to be there, and people who don't want to be there to not be there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then if we look at, say, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are really keen to join communities, and whether that be internal communities or external communities, and it might be that somebody's looking to join communities that maybe aren't within their comfort zone, let's say, right? So it might be, I'm going to go and join a community that's all around knitting or something like that. I've never knit before, something that's a little bit different, but allows them to grow and learn in areas that maybe they're interested in. What would be your sort of a couple of maybe pointers for people there to just sort of get them going? And obviously, we've talked through some stuff, but let's just bang. What is it?
Oh, Stu, I think it's rude that you would bring that up an hour and 6 minutes into our recording, because I've got another 4 or 5 hours worth of talking about this to go through. So
we can do a whole mini series on this, Drew. So this is just the starting point, right? Okay. We don't have to end it here.
Yeah. So I had this working title for a conference talk that I keep meaning to put together around learning out beyond the wall, and thinking about, this is my safe space, and this is how I like to learn. What is beyond the borders of what I know? And I come back all the way back to when we first started this conversation, and I told you that I got into community because I wanted to learn more. I was I thought I was in a pond, and if you only stick to learning opportunities and communities within the domain that you are safe in, you're still in a pond. It's a bigger pond, but it's a pond. So I actively encourage other people who I work with, or in communities that I'm part of, or I'm a hypocrite, but I try and force myself to do it as well, is go to things beyond your sphere of domain and influence. I went to a event put on by Bupa a couple of years ago, and that was because I was a wellbeing lead at the company that I was working for at the time, and I wanted to go and learn. I don't know if how up on the wellbeing space you are, Stu. I thought I was pretty good at it. I don't know anything. So I learned some absolutely amazing things, and I'll share this anecdote as well, because it was life-changing for me. So there was a speaker that they had on. I can't remember the name of the company who he works for, but if you've ever heard him talk, you will remember this anecdote and you'll know who it is. So he got up on the stage, and he was talking about how organizations can make it safe for I'm so culturally ignorant. I think he was talking about Gen Z. It might have been, but he was saying, and he went, okay, I'm going to give you a prompt, and room full of 100 people, big bold letters up on the screen. He came up and said, what would you do if, as a line manager, someone came to you and said this? And it says, I think I have a porn addiction. And we were a room full of adults. We all went, and he went, okay, good, capture that moment. Now, the statistics show that 1 in 13 people in the UK right now feels they have an addiction to porn. there's 100 people in this room. That means there is a certain percentage of people in this room who are likely going to have that addiction. And we all went, can you imagine? And then he goes, how safe do you think you've made them feel? How safe do you feel like you would make them? You've made them to deal with that addiction. What if that said, I'm addicted to alcohol? How would you have reacted? Would you be laughing? Would you be giggling?
Yeah.
And it was one of those mind blown moments. So that from that learning there is something that I've brought into. Well, how do I line manage people? How do I make myself supportive and open? And how do I be the person that someone might one day need me to be in a community space? How do I make it safe for people to talk about things that might be difficult? How do we support them? So, and that's, that was at a well-being conference. It's nothing to do with software testing. It's nothing to do with engineering management. Going to these places, to hearing voices and experiences that you don't hear where you are now is the thing that adds depth and richness to your experience as a human being. And I 100% every fiber, I encourage people to go and do these things that are not directly relevant to what you're doing today.
Yeah, it's such a great example, Drew. My brain's, and I've talked about this on a number of shows now, but I'm heavily into systems thinking now, and like how everything connects and how everything's relatable really to what we do in other, and like I can't unsee it. It's just so, but like in that instance, having that connection with what you learned there and then bringing it back into, because this is people, right? I'm gonna Werner will like kick me for this when I say just. I'm doing air quotes, people. I was like, you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching. Everything's people, right? So everything starts, ends with people. Whether you're in tech, whether you're in health, whether you're in finance, it's people. Right? So anything you can learn around that side of things, and communities are people. All right, so that's a great example of like where you can take that and you can apply it in so many different ways, including how you can, lead a community, build a community, lead a person, help develop a person, it's a great example, and encouraging people. I have a lot of conversations with people now about thinking outside that box, right? And trying to visualize it, right, to others that say, well, you don't have to go to a software testing conference to learn about software testing. Something that will help you with software testing, right? Let's say, and they sort of look at you and go, what? You're off your rocker, mate. No, genuinely, no. You can go to a health conference, or you could go to this conference, and you'll find something. If you go in there with a mindset of systems thinking and how I can use this to then, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. So yeah, I mean, I think sort of just about that around joining communities. I think sometimes people overthink it, and they sort of, that imposter syndrome kicks in and think, I'm going to be around a whole bunch of experts, like coming back to the word experts, right? Like knowledgeable people, let's say, that are way more knowledgeable than me in this room. I'm going to feel out of place. And actually, community is about feeling like you belong. And, and I think trying to find that balance of, we all have imposter syndrome, but finding that comfort and finding that satisfaction of actually feeling like you belong in that room with those people, regardless of your experience or anything like that. That's what community is about. For me.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, this has been brilliant, my friend, and I think that we've got so much more we could be talking about. But we could go on forever. As I do with every guest that joins us, I give them the last sort of final thought. Do you ever watch Jerry Springer?
Is this my Jerry Springer moment?
It's your Jerry Springer moments. Not everybody's old enough to know Jerry Springer, right? So it's just, have you got anything sort of final that you'd like to share with the audience around this?
Yeah, all right then. So I suppose my final thought on this is ultimately, the reason that I love communities and getting involved in communities and leading communities is it's one of the few things in life left now where you're doing it just to contribute to the human experience. You're not feeding AI, you're not creating a data set, you're just doing something for the betterment of making life nicer and better for other people. So,
Yeah.
you know, get involved in a community because that's where you go to find the people.
Yeah, I love that, and I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly why I do it. It's it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of energy. We have to balance life around these things, right, and prioritize. But that's exactly it, right? I absolutely love that, Drew. So, thank you again, my friend. This has been brilliant. Love this conversation. And I'm sure everybody that's been listening, those two people that we've been listening, like earlier that we were talking about, right? Hopefully they've taken some immediate value, some potential value. They're going to apply that value, and then realize that value. And then we didn't get into the other four.
Well done.
But we will link them all, right?
Yeah.
We will link them all. But that's it, everyone. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode and the conversation that me and Drew have had around communities. And as I said at the beginning, right, whether you're part of a community, whether you lead a community, or whether you're thinking about joining a community, we hope that you take some sort of value away from what we've been discussing today. And if you want to talk a little bit more about it, by all means reach out to me. Drew, can people reach out to you? Are you okay to reach out on LinkedIn and stuff? We'll share details around that. We'll share the resources that we've talked about as well. But that's it. The end of another episode. Can't believe that we're almost into May when this comes out. It will be May. So again, thank you, Drew. Really appreciate it, my friend. And for everyone listening, please like, please subscribe, please share, please comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. Share it with your neighbors, share it with your friends, share it with the strangers in the street, and share it with your communities, right? Don't forget them. But more importantly, join us next time on another episode of the Quality Talks podcast. Take care for now.